Hi there, Michael Bovee with Consumer Recovery Network. Thanks for tuning in to DebtBytes, our YouTube channel. Today I'm going to answer a reader question. The question came in, is Lexington Law a legitimate credit repair company to use? She gave some backstory, and I understand where she's coming from, and this is really relevant to a lot of people's questions about credit repair companies in general. So my answer isn't a pick on Lexington Law video. It's really, how do I feel about the legitimacy of credit repair companies in general? And my opinion isn't something that I just developed from the reader question. It's actually, what I'm sharing with you today is related to over 20 years of exposure to credit repair companies. So when we were getting ready to turn on the camera, we were discussing the title for this video. And we came up with 5 reasons credit repair companies suck. So that should give you a hint at my perspective. I'm going to bullet these items, all 5 of them, and then we're going to discuss them more generally. First off is cost. Second is their business model, how they work. 3 is you actually are increasing lawsuit risk. 4, things actually reappear that come off and jump back on there months later. And then 5 is that it just doesn't work, and for all the right reasons. Okay, so let's get into cost. 1, free is free. You have a right to dispute credit reporting errors on your credit report yourself, and charging somebody $100 a month for the privilege is very profitable for the business, but very costly to you. If you can do the same thing anybody else could do that is a credit repair company for free and in less than, say, 10 minutes, makes sense, right? But it's much worse than what I'm talking about free compared to them charging fees. And that gets into number 2, which is how they operate, their business model. So assume for a moment you have 8 items that you're trying to get either corrected or removed from your credit report. And I'll break this down. Say you have 2 that legitimately should not be there. Like 1 is over 7 years old, it's a negative, but it should have fallen off. It's 9 years old, should have fallen off 2 years ago. Another one is just a straight up error, right? And then 6 are things that, you fell behind. They're legitimately there, but you want them off so you can move on with other financing goals. And they charge $100 a month for doing this, but they don't do it all in one shot. They don't put all of these disputes in one letter. What they'll do, often enough, is they'll do one at a time. So you send one letter out one month, dealing with one issue, another letter out the following month with a different issue, and so on and so on. So at the end of 8 disputes, you're $800 lighter. In other words, it took a $100 monthly membership for 8 months to finish all of the disputes rather than putting them all on one dispute, which would be just $100 for that month. And let's say they had to redispute something or request reinvestigation in another dispute. So you've got maximum 2 months for that. And that's $200 versus $800. So the business model is designed to cost you a maximum amount of money. That's a 400% increase in fees. It's pernicious. There are reasons why they do things one at a time that no longer exist. That's some of the histrionics that I won't get into today, but maybe in future videos. Next, believe it or not, you are increasing, number 3, your risk of being sued. And this bears some explanation. When you send a dispute in, there are certain legal things that are triggered on the part of a credit reporting bureau and a bank or a debt collector, okay? So in days past, we had a credit reporting system or dispute system where it was just kind of like 2 computers playing ping pong with information back and forth. You send in the dispute, a very low-level employee onboards that dispute into their computer, and they code it one of a few ways. That code gets pushed out to whoever gave them that information, your bank, a debt collector, and their computers would talk, right? So not necessarily an investigation of any substance took place. Well, nowadays, those disputes are much more robust by regulatory purview that's now part of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The credit bureaus have somebody looking over their business practices like never before. So it's made some dramatic changes. When you dispute something, anything you put in that dispute is now going to the furnisher of the information. If you include documentation like, hey, this thing was paid, and you have proof that you paid it, you include that. It was never getting there before to the furnisher. Now everything's onboarded, it's getting over to the furnisher. And then they have to do an investigation. What you do in that, and there's several parts of this that I talk about in much more detail on the CRM website, and in some of our other videos about how to negotiate with debt collectors and or when you're sued and whatnot. But what you do when you send a dispute to a debt collector, for example, especially one who bought your debt, you are making them go and meet a requirement. As soon as they go and meet that requirement, now they've got all the data that they can use to sue you, and they're more prone to, okay, for a couple of reasons. They've now got the data that you made them go get, because they have to, so you're automatically an increased likelihood of being sued to collect. But even without that, what if they already had the data? Well, you've just identified yourself as somebody who has either a willingness or more of an ability to pay because you care about your credit report. And those are two things that all collectors, all banks, no matter what flavor of debt, no matter what the issue is, any collector wants to spend most of their time on somebody who, one, has an ability to pay the money, or two, a willingness, okay, because then you'll find a way to pay. So you have a willingness to do something financially when you care about your credit report, and you just telegraphed that. So I, as a debt collector, would want to spend more time looking at you and trying to get you to pay. So your dispute actually backfires. Later on this month, hopefully, if not in March, I'm going to be doing a video interview with a former debt collector, and the topic of that video is how do debt collectors read your credit report? So you might want to subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and look for that video in coming weeks. Let's move on and talk about number 4. Things reappear. And it kind of segues into number 5. So when you dispute a legitimate collection item off your credit report, it has a tendency to pop back up later. Why? Because it's legitimate, it's real, it's supposed to be there. Let's say, for example, that you have a collection item on your credit report and you dispute it, it pops off and you're, woohoo, credit repair company worked for me, it's awesome, right? Money well spent. And then 3 months later, you're thinking, okay, well that improved and now I can go do this, and you go to have your credit pulled at a car lot or, heaven forbid, a mortgage. And you suddenly just, nope, sorry, we've got this thing on there, and that's real deflating and embarrassing. So the reason it comes back on is because, again, the way these things report back and forth. So you get this dispute and, you know, maybe they didn't have the data on the other side after they get the dispute and everything onboarded from the credit bureau. They see that and they have to go get data to substantiate, you know, why it's on there and everything. And maybe that took a little longer than 30 days. They didn't get back to the credit bureau in time, and so the credit bureau removed it. But next month they have all the information and the data, and they push it on, off, and now it's going to come back on. So the system resets up and reports you as a delinquent unpaid collection account. So that's one of the reasons these days that that kind of thing can happen. But it's actually very common for disputed items to come back on there. Even stuff that shouldn't be on there. And everybody who looks at the situation goes, wait, well, this shouldn't be on there. Errors happen, mistakes happen. That's why you have a right to dispute in the first place. Even that stuff comes back on there. But the legitimate stuff, far more frequently. So it's not necessarily something to get overly excited about. If your credit repair company gets something off, you now have to make sure that it stays off. And so you're going to have to monitor your credit report. That's a big problem. So what happens when credit repair company doesn't work? Usually it's not working for the right reasons. And let me back up a minute here. When stuff shouldn't be on your credit, and it's obvious to everybody, like I said, that it doesn't belong, it doesn't belong. It's the easiest stuff to get off. It's a layup. You just, I mean, it's right there. So when you send in a dispute, your own, right? You log into one of the credit bureau's websites, you enter your disputes right there, or you do it in writing like I prefer, and send certified mail just to make a paper trail of the situation. What you're doing is, you know, I never had that address, okay? So you start looking at the little things, right? Well, I never lived there. Why is that address on there? That could actually be the reason for you having a mixed file chart, you know, somebody else with a similar name, the address, right? So you want to get that address off there. That's easy stuff, right? You've never lived there. They can't go out and substantiate your address somehow. So that's easy. You don't need a credit repair company to do that. That's the stuff that you shouldn't be paying anybody to do. But when you are trying to dispute, as is often the case, and as is the case with the woman who prompted this video, the reader question, she has legitimate things on her credit report that are bothering her. But it doesn't change the fact that they're truthful, they're honest. They are things that happened. She was set back financially and unable to pay. And so the negatives, the 30, 60, 90 charge-offs, and the additional debt collector that's showing up in 2 cases, is supposed to be there. And when that doesn't work, it's for the right reasons. In other words, you weren't supposed to get that off, or it was supposed to come back on. So when it's not working, when they're attracting customers that shouldn't be their customers, the credit repair organizations, it's already a fail, okay? What's better, and one of the alternatives that you have to using a credit repair company, and certainly a more permanent solution, is to resolve the debt. What you want to do, oftentimes, in my opinion, is negotiate those debts for the lowest possible payoff, and we have a ton of videos on DebtBytes here on our channel that address how to do that, who to do it with, when to do it, how each one of these collectors might do it, because we have, collection company related videos, bank related videos, so make sure and tune into those. But it's real simple, and once you negotiate a debt, pay as little as you can because the damage is already done. You don't get brownie points for paying all of the debt when it's really old like this. You get what you need, which is it's updated to show zero balance owed, and it's a resolved account, okay? And that's how you can make progress with your financial goals. Credit repair companies are almost next to unnecessary and not worth the cost, not worth the time that it takes to get these things accomplished. There's a whole bunch of history behind credit repair companies and all of that. If you're interested, let me know in the comments and I can share more detail. But if you have a specific goal that you're trying to reach, which is why you're probably on this video, and you have debts that yet are unresolved on your credit report, let's talk about it in the comments. Let's talk about if you have legitimate disputes, how to get those in and how to get things dealt with. If you're on this video because you do not know who that collector is on your credit report, call the original creditor and find out who they sent it to. You don't need to send in a dispute for that. I'm Michael Bovee. Thanks for tuning in. See you on the next video.